good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I decided to speak in English because Steinbeis is an international organization, and also maybe after lunch and in the afternoon you'll pay more attention if it's in English. Many people are not familiar with the term myopia, which is, I'm happy to hear. That's what the subject of my presentation is about. It's also about myopia being the silent killer of innovation. Innovation, many firms talk about it, everyone wants to do it. It's like mini skirts or skirts in general, comes in different shapes and sizes, it never goes out of fashion. And people define in the organization, people define it themselves as different things. Some define it as products, some as business models, some define it as services, but they only have one thing in common, it's the business culture that binds them together, which is the common values, beliefs, and of the firm itself, and the norms that the firm has. Innovation, unfortunately, has become more and more rare in the corporate world. Large companies can afford to acquire it and buy it from others. Not too many firms actually invest in their research and development. Why is that? Corporations have no patience for it. They usually don't have money. Investors have the money, but they don't have the patience. Inventors have the patience, but they don't have the money to actually pursue it. Innovation has, according to Steve Jobs, doesn't have much to do with money. It's actually how you are led, how much you get into it, and it's actually that you allow and create this business culture for which allows you to be innovative. What are the fundamentals of innovation? Innovation is based on human capital, which is actually the skills and the knowledge and experiences of the employees. Then you have the relational capital, which is your network that you have built with the suppliers, with the networks, with the shareholders. You have the structural capital, which is actually how the firm is organized and its operational processes. It's the innovation capital, which is the only capital that a firm has, which actually belongs to the capital, which are the patents, the products, and stay in the capital, in the firm itself. The other ones are based on a human factor, which comes from the humans and the people that are actually working in there. Leadership is actually the most important part of innovation. According to McKinsey research, 70% of senior executives have said that innovation is one of the top drivers for their companies in the future 5 years. Unfortunately, most of them also say that companies all want innovation, but they don't really know how to define this innovation. So where does it come from? Innovation comes from creative workers. What are the creative workers? Creative workers are people who can think out of the box, people who are not afraid to challenge assumptions, people who are not afraid to ask questions, people who are looking for solutions to problems and are not just focused on the problems, and people who have the courage to take risks. So the company's ability to innovate is actually based, and it's actually seated in the employees that it has and the fresh ideas that its employees bring. It's actually a very simple thing to think about, but it's often the simple things are taken for granted, and often the companies actually forget that they have to create this kind of an environment which allows people to make mistakes, to be afraid, not to be afraid to actually challenge and ask questions. So what is myopia? Myopia actually comes from a Greek word which means shut eyes, and it's actually a medical condition for nearsightedness, and it has been used in business to actually represent a short-sighted, inward-looking approach which results in failure to see change. For most companies, what it means that you think you know what business you're in, but you really don't know what business you're in, or you don't know how to define it. So, for instance, many people, when they say, oh, our customers know about us, they know what we're doing, we don't need to change anything, that's a myopic, actually, state you find yourself in. This is similar to a scenario for most companies these days. Companies and organizations have become very complex. Like I already said, innovation is a rare thing. It requires a lot of technical knowledge. It requires a lot of resources. The only thing that is certain today in our business world is change. And change has become very important. So from all the factors that face the managers today, ambiguity is actually one of the most important ones. So you have to know, as a manager, in managers, you have to know how to deal with ambiguity. You have to know that you have to trust your gut feeling in order to make decisions. You have to feel comfortable with the fact that it's okay not to know everything. It's okay not to be right the whole time. You as managers and also the employees have to be aware that mistakes are actually part of innovation, but you have to learn from these mistakes. You have to listen to employees. You have to also listen to experts. And most of all, you have to have courage. So myopia actually blocks this organization's capability to have this courage and to have this broader perspective of an organization. I thought this was perfect example of myopia, where you are most managers or within organizations, managers will talk about something, but they won't do it. So we need to improve service. We can't afford it. Everything is based on money. We're investing everything into promotions. Why are we investing into promotion? Because our service is so bad. So in the end, we're actually talking about the same thing, but we don't see it. This is an example of myopia in a business where you have the short-sighted approach to business, where you're inner-focused rather than outer-focused, and where you're resisting change instead of embracing it. Myopia hides in different types of levels. You can have marketing myopia, functional, management, strategic, organizational. At every level in business, you can have this short-sightedness approach. What does that mean? And the early signs of myopia, that's usually when you have a group of people who are very active, who are actually burning and to do something. When you have a new team, you see that the performance increases. Over time, you see the curve that it laps, and then it starts to decrease. You have reached an institutional ceiling. What does that mean? The employees who come in new, fresh, with ideas, all of a sudden learn over time that there are existing rules in the company that prevent this creative thinking, that there are processes that are installed who don't really allow this creative thinking. You have non-zero gravity managers, so managers who are actually allergic to any changes. They don't want to see any changes because change means usually work or problems. And you don't listen to your customers. You are so focused on designing something that you don't really see what the market has done. Or you have political forces that actually force you. So what is the response from most managers that they do? Most of the time they make the workers work harder, work weekends, put more time, which leads to a burnout, drop in productivity. It's like actually killing the horse that's pulling your cart. So what do you have to do? The best thing is to actually build an organizational agility, which means you have to look at the conditions you have currently in your company, and you have to change them to foster innovation based on leadership, agile management, strategy, and design. Organizational agility is actually an organization which is capable of sensing change and to adjust to change. What it means is that focusing on something too much is also as bad, because it's like looking at the world or business world through a microscope. You don't actually have the whole picture of it. So you have just one single view of it. So it's very important to know what to focus on and how long to focus on. You need expertise advice, but expertise is a paradox. You can't innovate with too much expertise, but at the same time, you can't innovate without it. Marketing myopia. When people go and they buy a drill, they don't actually want to have a drill. The Theodore Levitt, who is the father of this marketing myopia, said, people actually want to buy a 1/4-inch hole, but they actually don't want the hole. What they actually want is they want to do something when they put a screw into that hole. So most of the time what they're actually doing is thinking, I need to put my shelves or cabinets or build something whenever they want to buy a drill. So myopia means you really have to know your business, trying to predict ahead what does your what does your customer want, what is he really asking for, what is the real problem he needs a solution for. So that is the hard part about myopia and trying to really understand your customers. Functional myopia. The perfect example is the German soccer team. We didn't have one single star, which made it powerful, which is exactly what you don't want. If you have one single star or an employee who is the employee who you're pushing to, that person might become important at the disadvantage of some other of the colleagues. So what you want to do is you want to instill this feeling that everybody is pulling through together. And you don't want to have these star performers because you have a lot of people who will then get jealous of their performance. It leads to a culture of actually ineffective thinking. So what you have to do is you have to take a broader approach, and you have to actually make everyone be a mutual dependence. So you want to have things change, but as a functional and a collective effort. Management myopia, and this is simply the management myopia is often people are looking for experts in one particular field, not realizing that in a particular department, the more people from different backgrounds, for different cultures you have, then you bring a lot of different thinking, different way of solving problems, which is also an incredibly important aspect of actually solving problems within. So don't be afraid to actually bring a mathematician into a marketing department, because it might be helpful to solve some other problems. Strategic myopia, meetings. Meetings are a very important part of a management process, but this is exactly what you don't want to do. You don't want to have a meeting, to hold a meeting, so that people simply feel that it's a nice get-together. How leaders actually structure a meeting sends the signals to what do they expect from the people in that meeting. You don't want people to simply repeat and say the same thing that the managers want to hear, because you'll be repeating the same ideas you already have. You want to bring new ideas into the meeting, so you will have to give this message that in this meeting we want to, any idea is a good idea, or there is no stupid question to. So yes, you can focus on financial aspects in a business, but the behavioral aspects of a business are just as important. You can't bring it down just to the balance sheet. This is a perfect example of what management sometimes thinks where the firm is going and what the customers actually perceive it. Most of this, according to McKinsey, also 600 executives had said that actually innovation was extremely important to them. Innovation was connected to leadership, and only those leaders who actually, or the companies that had a strong leader, were actually successful. And those leaders felt that they were making the right decision. So it's not just something you bring into the company. It actually starts from the top down. It deals with communication. How does the management talk? You don't want to be a manager that simply relies on memos. You want to hear what the customers are saying. You want to hear what your employees are saying. And the leaders are from the top are sending a strong message to their employees. So, like I said, myopia is actually, to build a strong business, you have to, requires a constant balancing between the focus and the myopia. What are the remedies to manage myopia? One is maybe to have incentives that force the behavior of the shareholders and the employees to think long term. So instead of awarding short-term performance and short-term profits, to think long term. To maybe, instead of just financial awards, think of training, providing casual days, kindergarten in the firm, something that is also non-financial incentives. Shareholders to give them maybe an extra shareholder dividend, long-term dividend, which forces their shareholders to stay invested in a firm for a long term. All of these things are actually unique and not happening these days. Everyone is considering and thinking of short-term profits, which is actually in the long term detrimental to innovation. Feedback is essential. Feedback, trust, building trust. So within the company, so that the employees feel that they bring valuable information. There is a lot of trust among all of that creates nothing builds innovation more than a happy employee that loves what they do, an employee that brings passion for their work. What the company has to realize, people are actually the building blocks of the company, and a company that is actually trying to reach ahead without appreciating its people, it won't get very far. We started with Steve Jobs and we finished with him. One of the messages that I wanted to say, there is no single answer for a particular firm. There is no one-size-fits-all rule for innovation and how to deal with myopia. But what is very important is that the companies have a clear vision, and that requires patience, money, deep intelligence, commitment, and will. And perseverance is one of the most important things. Just stick with it. As one of the founders of a popular American company, J.C. Penney said, "Theory is splendid, but until put into practice, it is valueless." So I encourage all of you who have heard my presentation, go out there and create an environment and create a corporate culture that actually tries to foster innovation. Thank you very much.